everybody, and welcome back to Rinkside. Glad to be here again. Myself, Ryan Steeves, and Emma Miskew. How you doing, Emma?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, doing great. It's been a really busy fall. I feel like there's lots to catch up on. Keeping up on your career and Team Holman's successes in 2025 is busy enough for all the success you've been having. So I really want to pick your brain on that. But we've got a really, really exciting topic today around coaching. We're in transitions to coaching from playing. So I'll let you introduce our guest this week, Emma. Thrilled he can join us.
Yeah, so today I'm really excited. We have a guest who's been not only a longtime friend of mine, but we competed together in mixed doubles, and he coached us. So, I've had a relationship for a very long time, and this is Ryan Fry. He's a Olympic gold medalist, along with many other curling successes. And just a couple years ago, decided to step away from competing in the sport and has taken on the coaching side of the sports. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Em. It's good to be on the podcast. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And I think we've talked a lot about coaches on the podcast and different angles of coaches, but very rarely are these coaches such recent players or have had competed so recently. So what was that like transitioning from playing at the highest level in the sport to sitting on the bench behind the sport and trying to help in any way you could there?
Yeah, curling's it's a interesting sport when you're coming to the end of your career, because you still have like a lot of competitive juices in you and you still want to compete at the highest level, but it's not always attainable. And eventually you have to see that the sport's kind of moving past you in a player's standpoint, and the training, as you know, all that goes into being a top level player. Everything has to be perfect. And as you're getting older, that kind of becomes more apparent that you want to push your objectives into other places. So that's kind of the choice I made. And, I think that it's a funny story when me and Emma when I did decide to come on as coach, it was kind of like seeing if it was a fit on either way, which was super exciting because I wasn't sure. I wanted to get into coaching, and, we are really close, and we've been like really close friends for such a long time that taking that next step to me being in a role where I'm trying to help the team grow was a big step for both of us. So yeah, I remember that really helping with that transition because I was able to give that competitiveness to a team and kind of take everything I learned through my career and try to start developing my skills on making that something valuable to a team. So that's kind of what I did with them. And, we had a great first year together. And I think it was, there was a lot of obstacles, like families were being built. It was a new team, different positions, all these objectives. And I think like it just shows to how great this team is to me, and, how amazing and their successes is not something that I ever didn't see happening for them because they are that dedicated to being such a good team. So it was, it was quite the transition, but I think that really helped cement that I could give something to the team. And then, I end up moving on to a men's team just because that did light that fire in me. And it's a different thing giving your energy to a women's team and to a men's team when you're still very, very competitive. Like you have those juices flowing in you that you can get out a little bit with the women's team, but not quite to the same level as when you're competing against the guys you grew up playing with and against and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's fascinating, Ryan. I mean, your players are so fortunate to have somebody step in and help coach with such vast experiences, tons of championships, world championship appearances, Olympics, many Briars appearances. What was it like for you? And I always love asking coaches this who are fresh out of playing. Was it the case where you wish you could have coached before you played? Did it shed light on the sport through watching through that different lens and trying to coach and inspire and teach? Is it the case with curling? Like, you wish you could have coached before you played?
No, I think it's just like an evolution of lessons you learn as an athlete, and you develop those. And I think it's things you regret that, on teams that I was played with in the past, like different versions of myself that I could have given that team and things that I learned along the way. And you can't like ever regret not being that version of yourself. It just has to happen. You have to evolve. And taking those lessons that you learned and just your viewpoint on the way things work and, how energy flows and everything, I think that's where you develop, a stronger sense of what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest thing, having come off being a player and been coached by various coaches, that you took into your coaching approach to try to get the most out of the players out there? Because I think we've all been there, where you have a lot of different styles of coaches that you have over the years as a player. And then there's things that you like and there's things you don't like naturally. So I'm always curious, as such a recent player, what you took in from all that coaching and how you used that to coach the teams.
Yeah, I think that's just the lessons you learn, Emma, on the way up. Like same as you, we grew up around so many influential people in the sport. Like I'm a few years older than you, but the Earl Morrises, the John Morrises, like all these people that I grew up with, Don Duguid and Ray Turnbull, guys that, were super, super impactful in the sport. Vic Peters, you just start going through the list of these people, and you just take a little piece of them, every time you go. Like even when I curl with Brad Gushu, you take some of the professionalism and things that he brings, and you take a little piece of that with you. So you just kind of learn along the way. And then when you get to the end of your career, you have all this knowledge that you don't want to just let go away. So you want to try to help, somebody grow and grow with them. And I think that's, how you become successful, to be honest with you.
And Ryan, as you transitioned to a coach, did you adopt a style of any particular, really memorable or impactful coach that you had, or did you try to carve your own path based on your style of play and the type of player that you were?
It's hard. I coach more on like a dynamic part. I try to get the players that I'm a part of, or the teams that I'm a part of, to try to develop the mindset that they have to be super, super adaptable to, other people's opinions, and you have to work as a group. And if you all push in one direction, it's amazing how many things you can accomplish. And again, like, I'll reference M's team, not just because it's her podcast or your guys' podcast, but it's, you get a collective that is pushing forward, and it's not just, that's why you become so integrated in these teams, because it's the families, it's, the kids, it's everyone. And this whole unit is pushing forward, and it just drives that success.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another thing we've talked about a lot on this podcast is parent coaching. I know your father was quite a successful curler in his own right. Did any of, two questions. Did your dad ever coach you? Were your parents ever involved in coaching? And did that have an impact on you as a coach?
Yeah, my dad, obviously, he had a major impact, both my parents, because curling was the topic of conversation, as is, for most curlers they're growing up in curling families. Like it's the conversation that goes. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I just, we do talk a lot about the impact of parent coaches. Some parents can do it successfully, others can't. It's something I struggle with, coaching my own sons. And so I wondered if your dad had coached you, and it sounds like he did, and how that then impacts you at this stage of your life as a coach. And, basically, did your father's approach to coaching rub off on you in any way, or just what that impact was?
Yeah, he coached me through juniors. It was a tumultuous relationship growing up, because we were very competitive. I ended up curling with my dad, and my dad was one of my biggest supporters. So he was along for the ride, him and my mom, from, the jump, which is so cool. But, we talked about curling at the dinner table. That's like, I was coached from the time I was 5 years old till, the time I was 40, just before my dad passed away. Like it's the coaching was always there. But it evolves like everything else. Like I think you can take certain pieces from the past, but the sports evolution is just on such a trajectory that you have to really grow. What coaching means, and I'm a big believer that I think coaching is just really bringing personalities together and making them work. Because you're not putting together teams that don't have talent, and I'm not working with teams that don't have massive amounts of talent. So what's the separator? The separator is that learning how to work with one another and collectively understand each other and make concessions for each other, and be each other's teammates and cheerleaders. And I think that's what drives the team. And I think I've learned through many people. Like I've learned stuff from Emma, I've learned stuff from Rachel. Like you just learn along the way, and if you're that type of sponge, then you get a very good sense of how to help a team grow.
Yeah. That checks out You mentioned coaching men versus women. And I think this is something we've also talked about because over the course of my career in various sports, I've had coaches that really make me empowered and feel like I'm in a safe space to go and do what I do. And then I've had other coaches that I feel are on like daring me to make a mistake so they can get mad at me and are overly critical even at a young age. And so I think of both those styles and I wonder a little bit whether the coaches that are a little bit harsher sometimes would be better suited for a men's team than a women's team. But having seen both sides of coaching for you, what was the different perspective other than playing or coaching against players that you played against? How did you see the style of coaching differ between my team and the Italian team?
And honestly, it's very similar. That when like top competitors, like people that really have a drive to be the best, like male or female, they have a sense to them that they want to better themselves and continually work on themselves. And your team sets the bar, with work ethic. I think the differences are more that there's that, that it's a hard thing to explain. It's not like, it's like that male energy that, when you're playing against, Brad Jacobs or Gushu and guys that I've had like a ton of history with, when you're coaching a men's team, it's like driven off of like an engine, like there's a bit of like an anger to it, whereas with the women's team, I think that it's about building something very, very strong together, and you work more collectively than against one another. Does that make sense at all? Like it's a different style of coaching because you need to understand the emotion side of things a lot more. You have to be way more in touch with, how you say things and how you approach things. Whereas sometimes with the men, you can just be like, go tell them to F off and cool it and take a break. There can be that more aggressive approach. And I like that style, but I think I said this to you last week. Like I also miss, being connected and that, more just like it's like a business and it's like a family feel that like grows it together. Mm-hmm. I miss that part of it. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a few differences as well.
Yeah.
That's a tough question also.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion. That's why we wanted your take on it.
It's a tough question.
You should hear the answers of coaching, 10-year-old girls versus 10-year-old boys that we've had on this podcast. It's pretty good. Stark differences. I think one of the things that we sometimes forget here is, Emma and her team are doing stuff that no other team has done before. And you've had a front row seat to this. And I think it's got to be different coaching, of course, 12-year-old girls and one of them, definitely the most successful female team our country has produced, including across the men's probably. So what do you think the big differences are in your role coaching, the most elite talent there is in women's curling versus if you flipped it and went back a couple decades and coached young girls? It may seem obvious, but what kind of message do you give to coaches as they're, trying, they're sitting in ranks and trying to create the next in teams like Team Homan that have just had this staying power and collectiveness? So, what kind of messages can you give to those younger coaches trying to recreate this?
I wish I had the answer for that. Like when you just have to, I think at a young age, like as a coach, you have to be able to assess talent and, have a very, very honest approach to your players. And I know I've never coached younger athletes. So yeah, like there's way more to it because you have to develop their self-esteem. There's so many things that you have to help them grow into. And that takes a special person. And, my heart goes out to the people that are, in that because it's something, what I'm doing is so much different than that, because when you're coaching teams that are, similar to your age, you're growing together. Like you're trying to connect dots together. When you're coaching at a young age, it's, younger athletes, they're still developing into themselves and who they want to be and the type of effort they want to put in. Like when you rewind the clocks and you go look at myself or Rachel or Emma or, Tracy, Sarah, any athletes you go back to, they would compete harder at a young age. Like they knew already that they wanted to accomplish something extraordinary, and they didn't have the answer, but there's something in their mind that's driving them and moving them forward without ever really knowing why, because you make sacrifices along the way that other people wouldn't make, and it drives you to that ultimate that success. So I think as a coach, you need to obviously assess that talent and make sure that, the kids are, if they're not going to be the next Rachel Homan or Emma Miskew, who are they going to be? They still could get a lot of, empowerment out of the sport, but that's different athletes. So you have to coach in levels at a younger age, right?
Yeah, I know when I stopped playing at the professional level, I got into coaching at the university level. That was my first foray into coaching. And then after 4 years, I went back down to the very bottom at like 6-year-olds. And I found it very, very challenging, which you probably experienced, right? If you went down to those levels.
And you coached hockey?
Yeah, I coached hockey, men's hockey at the university level. So it was closer to my sort of, mental understanding of hockey, right? I didn't have to go down and break the game down into its fundamental components. And so that's probably the fun part for you. You've satisfied your competitive edge that you talked about by getting in at the highest level and staying at that highest level. Whereas if you come out of playing at that high level and go down to the grassroots levels, it's a challenging endeavor for coaches, especially those like yourself who've done it at the highest levels.
And maybe it's like when you're coming off of being a top athlete and you choose that coaching, I think as you get older, your focus goes to that because you've seen the evolution. Now you want to take that next generation and help move it forward. Mm-hmm. But I think it's like, if you have a graph, I think it's like you're going down, and as you're aging, your knowledge wants to be spread apart. But there is still a very high competitiveness in me, like at 47 years old. So like I'm not playing, but I'm still believe that, I can contribute to a top team, men's or women's, because you still have that really high competitive spirit and like live or die with the wins. I think once that weans off, then you're more suited to coach a development team and somebody that you want to see along the process.
Have you felt the pressure, Ryan, to prove yourself as a coach?
For sure. Like I said, working with Team Homan was, we were all just, Rachel and Emma were coming off of a lot of success. Sarah had a lot of success. Tracy had a lot of like hard beats, like hard losses. So I kind of was able to relate to all four of them. And, it was just so much fun building a team together and seeing where it can go. And then, from where they've taken it, from 4 years or a year, 3 years ago is unbelievable. And like, don't kid yourself. There's definitely times I'm sitting here being like, man, if I just would have stayed with that team, I would have looked like such a boss. But it is what it is. I think everything happens for a reason, and it's super cool to see what they're going to accomplish. And, I said, I was in the airport with Tracy yesterday. I said, like, I have like a storybook ending would be like Team Homan winning the gold, and then Team Retornez also being able to win the gold. And it would just be like an absolute bow. And then I'll be good to go coach younger people.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is a challenging time. And also knowing when you signed on with Team Retornez, they are the home team in Italy. So they didn't have to earn their spot. They got a spot while they would have earned it anyway. How are you managing the emotional side of that, the pressure side of that, of going into that, knowing you're the hometown team, but also for 3 years, knowing you're going to be in the Olympics? Because not most countries, they know probably they'll qualify for the Olympics, but you still have to get in, whereas you knew. So how did you manage that? And how have you managed that with the players and preparing for being a hometown team at an Olympic Games for such a long period of time?
Yeah, there's definitely no recipe for it. And I think that's part of the challenge that I really wanted to take on, when the opportunity presented itself. But it is a very difficult thing to plan for. I think this team, they were in, and I think they are constantly having to prove to themselves that they are good enough and that they are they are capable of achieving something like winning a gold medal. And I think they're beginning to prove that to themselves. And I think that confidence in the team is starting to build as we get closer to Cortina. It's dealing with the hometown crowd and all that stuff, it can be a huge asset, and it can also be it could be something that adds more pressure. So trying to develop that that callous skin, that understanding, that when something is said to you, you can kind of let it go in one ear and out the other, and adapt to everything. The same pressures are with Team Canada, and you know that, like, whether you're at home or whether you're abroad, you still have a ton of expectation and a ton of people wanting something so badly for you. I think we just saw that with the Toronto Blue Jays. The entire country rallies around it because they want to see something amazing happen, and they want to feel that with you. And I think that if we can harness all of that energy, I think it's going to be a benefit. But that's part of my job coaching over the next 3 months, is just really to make sure that we show up in Cortina feeling like we can win, feeling like we have a chance. And all that outside noise, hopefully we've been able to create a big enough bubble around ourselves that when we go in there, magic happens. And magic, we both know that magic is definitely everywhere. It's helped us in both of our careers, and I think that it can happen again. So it's just creating that belief, and hopefully the families and everyone rallying around you push us all forward, and we're just stellying in the Dolomites together.
Right, Ryan, I've got to ask you, I always find this, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, and I'm sure the Italian media isn't tuning in, but I always get interested during the Olympics when you see foreign nationals coaching right outside of their country. So you're coaching, for our listeners, the Ritornas rink out of Italy as a Canadian, but this happens a lot in many Olympic sports. What is that like for you, not being your home country or your national country? Recognizing this as a coaching achievement for you, it's an incredible experience. But I've always wanted to ask coaches like that, what's that feeling like?
Yeah, I think it's more about, like, I'm about people. Like, it doesn't matter to me whether you're American, Canadian, Italian, Swiss. Curling is such a multicultural sport. You really have access to every country in this world. And I think that we're a family of curlers, and we want this sport to grow to the highest level possible. And, to do that, you have to captivate audiences, and you have to, create storylines. For me, if I'm able to help Italy move forward in medal, that's great for curling. Team Homan going through and having the record they had, and, really having an understanding of what they're doing and then pushing themselves forward. There's just so much opportunity that it's.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for that. It's interesting. Yeah, and another burning question that I have here, and this comes up a lot with ex-players, especially ex-players at the highest levels. True or false, Ryan? Do all former players make great coaches?
I do not think so. No.
Okay, so false. And so what is it that allows so many or some great ex-players to transition successfully? So for all those people out there, and I always encourage ex-players to try to get into coaching, because they have so much to offer by way of experience and context, and especially in the youth sport.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of
landscape
loaded. It's kind of a loaded question, because some curlers just don't want to, or athletes don't want to coach. I think the ones that want to coach have something to give, or there wouldn't be that understanding. And I know a lot of ex-athletes that they want to give back immediately, as soon as their careers. And there's a lot of people on tour who have sons and daughters that curl. So there's that coaching. I think that coaching from ex-athletes is just something that happens very, very naturally. And the ones that want to do it, and the ones that don't.
Yeah. I feel like it's those of us who, having had so many coaches, for me, it's definitely learning from every coach, but also learning like what works for some players doesn't always necessarily work for somebody else. And that was a little bit of the conversation of men versus women. But even within a women's team, the coaching style would be very different player to player. And everyone would need something different. And tough love can work for some and could be detrimental for others. And I think that it's about being adaptable in the coaching style to be able to give to each player what they need to perform.
And having that timing, right? Like being able to do that, but also understanding when an athlete can be accepting of certain information and when they can't be accepting of certain information. And sometimes players need to be, positive things, positive reinforcement, things pulled out of them that they're able to park the negative shit that's in their head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you're able to do that, then yeah, you're giving a lot to, a team. But I think you have to, like you said, I think, you're a good example is if you've been coached by so many, and we talk about curling with everybody. So it's like every little conversation we've had along the way is trained us, and it's taught us, what you need to do to be successful. And yeah, if you can give that down to a talented team and you see them successful, I think it just proves to yourself as an ex-athlete, like that you had the recipe for success in your mind. And it reconfirms that, yes, I have a big part to play in why my team has been successful. And maybe there's even a little bit of that, you're still trying to prove your abilities in the sport.
Yeah. What like a topic that I've thought about a lot and has come up too is confidence in players and how impactful confidence can be for performance. Like it's undeniable that if you're feeling confident, usually that turns into results. And if you're not feeling confident for whatever reason that is, it often can be a challenge. How have you used your expertise from being a player? Obviously, we've all been there. You've had moments where you're extremely confident that you feel like you can't miss. And then you have moments where you're like, I don't want to throw right now because I am not playing well. How did you use that to bring to a team to try to build confidence within those teams? And how do you choose how to share information based off of keeping your athletes confident?
Yeah, you just draw past experiences. And, I think that's where, a big topic where mental health comes into play with athletes. And, I've definitely struggled in my life with, building that confidence and having belief in myself. And, it's, I spent a lot of time traveling and trying to find that person, and having that belief in yourself is one of the biggest possible things you can do. So building that confidence in your players is just trying to understand that when you are positive, the world opens up. And when you're thinking negative, you can also draw that energy to yourself too. So it's understanding that, building the type of confidence that helps you succeed is like building your confidence in life. It's not only about, being able to hear things and not be affected by them, being able to understand that other people have viewpoints, and it's just much, much easier to let them have their viewpoints and you have yours. There's so many lessons you learn along the way, because you do. When you suffer from confidence issues, it definitely draws on your performance. It draws on the way you treat people, how you converse with your teammates and your coaches and everything. Like it affects every part, because it's a form of sadness or a form of depression, whatever you want to call it on the smallest scale. But if you can build confidence in your players, and players can build confidence in themselves, they open themselves up to achieve absolutely everything. And if I had that knowledge as when I was a player, I probably would have been able to win more than I did. But it is what it is. That's it. That you have to learn those lessons as you're growing up and be easy on yourself, because the only way to grow is through failure. And however major or minor that is for some person, that's, if they look deep enough in there, there's a lesson. And if you take that lesson and learn it and apply it and keep going, everything gets good. You get a better understanding.
Yeah, well said, Ryan.
At least that's what I tell myself. Myself.
It sounds good to me. We get someone like you on who's coached Team Home, and Emma. I have to ask, tell us something that the average outsider wouldn't know about Team Homan and Emma, and what it's like coaching them. Because the day of a life of a coach with a team like that has got to be fun.
Honestly, like I said, I still miss it a lot, because it's a friendship more than anything. And you want to help each other achieve. And that's one thing with all the members of Team Home, and not myself and my wife, Jessica. Like we absolutely love this team, and the families and everyone that's around it. So coaching them was awesome. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat, just because you understand the level of commitment all of them have. And when you see that, it's pretty cool. So I think more than anything, if you pull back the curtain, you're just going to see a lot of work, and it's a lot of work on themselves individually. It's a lot of work on, the way they approach being a teammates. Yeah, you would see some pretty hard work. And if you could mimic it, you'll probably add some success to your team. Would be my.
I love when the root of all of this is hard work. What a great lesson. And I think we do see that a lot in you, Emma, as outsiders watching. And it's really nice to hear that come right from a coach.
From the same, we're all built from the same cloth that way.
It is.
Yeah.
It's true. And being adaptable and open, right? Like, I think that, one thing with me and Emma is, as friends over the years, we definitely didn't shy away from telling each other. I think things are kept very open between us. And even as teammates, as short as it was, I think we had that. And that success, that type of adaptability makes, if you can add that as a layer to yourself, it just makes you so much more affordable.
Yeah, so is home right now Toronto, Ryan, for you? Are you in the Toronto area?
Yeah, hi, man. I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Literally nonstop right now. We took on quite a bit. Yeah, I just got back from Tahoe. I got a couple of days home, and then we got a training camp in Italy, and then Europeans in Finland. But then I'll be watching Team Homan on my iPad nonstop. So it's gonna be 2 weeks of intense curling. But after this next little push, there's just so much to look forward to.
So can any of the local curling clubs get, in the next few years, look out for Ryan Fry as a coach of youth curling?
Yeah, buddy, you never know where I'm going to end up. You never know.
Who knows?
I'm still very highly competitive. So I want to, this sport is growing. And it's building superstars, and, I want to be a part of that. I want to see what, this group of investors and this group can take curling, the curling group. And, if it builds to success, I definitely want to be a part of curling for, as it builds through here, because the more that happens, the more youth get interested in the sport. And then there's more options for a guy like me to jump down and try to coach a 16-year-old team into the pros at 18 and stuff like that. Totally. Like, there's different levels to it.
Yeah. Good for you. Well, we'll let you go on that, Ryan. I'll give Emma the last word. It's very, very cool having you here. Thanks for your time and good luck. And
and thanks for being on our podcast. We love to hear your perspective, and thanks for always being on our cheering squad still for our team. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Best of luck. Thanks for having me. And we'll be talking during the week. But go kick some ass. I'll be cheering. And it was great meeting you, Ryan.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks. Well, thanks again to Ryan Fry, curling, quite an accomplished curler himself at the highest levels, Olympic curler, Brier winner, Team Homan coach we've heard about. I was hoping, Emma, for a little more dirt on you guys, and he didn't really go there. He didn't give us anything juicy.
No.
Probably appropriate, though.
I feel like there's not that much. We're kind of, we operate kind of like any other team does. But we were such close friends with him that he fit in really well. But it was interesting because we've talked to some coaches, and you're a coach, and the coaches we've had on here have been of younger athletes. Mm-hmm. And Ryan's he was our coach, and then he's a coach of the Italian team who are adults. And it's an interesting difference because he was saying, you can kind of shut conversations down when an athlete is emotional about a certain situation, whether that's anger or upset or whatever. And that would have to be handled quite differently if they were younger. Yeah. So, hearing the side of coaching adults, I thought was interesting because we haven't talked about that very much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of similarities in what he was saying about, me being coached at a professional level. I draw some experiences from that, and then coaching at the university level, and then heading back to sort of the youth grassroots. The more I think about it, it's all the same. The same issues are prevalent, and the same issues force you to, be thoughtful about how you coach. It's just how you handle it. I think what he said about confidence. I mean, confidence plagues the athletes at the highest levels, right? And it also really weighs on children, and if you're crushing them, treating them like 18-year-olds when they're 10 or 11 or 12, then that weighs on them too. And then they don't perform as well and they don't have as much fun and they probably leave the sport. So, it's interesting to draw parallels between, the important things to athletes, whether they're professional or, young children.
Yeah. And the way he said you have to know the timing of delivering a message, but also the tone and the way that you deliver a certain message. I think that that is a skill in itself, being able to share important information when it needs to be shared in a way that gives a athlete confidence, not takes away from it. And I think that there's so many coaches who feel so strongly about sharing that information that sometimes the information comes out in a way that actually takes that confidence away from athletes. And I know that because I've been there. Yeah. And I've been that athlete where the way that the message was delivered, it actually was pretty impactful in a negative way, not to their, that's not obviously the intent, but it wasn't shared in a way that made me feel confident afterwards and actually raised more questions. And I think being able to know when you need to say something and how you're going to say that is such an important coaching skill. And I think that's something that especially to the younger athletes, anyone out there who's coaching should take into account. And that's the same with parents. Like you're leaving a game, a practice, whatever situation with your child in the car, you are in a way coaching them because you're going to have a conversation about how that game went, how that practice went, how did they perform, and being able to pick and choose how you share information to make sure that you're coaching your child in the best way that you can is something that I think there should be some reflection there.
Oh, I deal with this all the time as a father. Sometimes the hardest part about, you say coaching your child is almost trying to learn to, when to be quiet. I often find myself sitting in that car ride home thinking, these are the 3 things I'd love to say right now. And you have to ask yourself, is this going to help or not? Right. And most times the answer is no. I'm not going to solve anything revolutionary in this car ride home. It's not the time. Just be quiet. And so it's tough as a parent.
Or drawing on some positives. If you have to talk about something, it doesn't always have to be critical. And I think of like the car rides home with my parents. And I mean, my dad, he's a very positive person. He usually saw the positive lens from it, but I've seen it, the other side of it, where it's over analyzing and nitpicking performance from a critique and like actually making the athlete feel like they did everything wrong as opposed to highlighting some of the good stuff. And I think that's also something that could be of note to parents too, is making sure for everything that you talk about from a negative angle, you can also draw on all the great things that were done
3 good
too,
for 1
because
bad.
we often forget. We often forget all those good things because we just expect them, but it's good to still talk about them.
Yeah. Well, great having Ryan on and hearing from someone so esteemed in the sport, and really appreciated him joining. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're back. Stay tuned, next week for some more good Rinkside content. Thanks for listening as always, people.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.